Today I am doing a lesson about things to see in England. What you can see in England. This might be places to visit, areas of natural beauty, museums perhaps, culture. So what you can see in England. However, these are things you can see in England outside London. Because when people go to visit England, often they only see London. And there are lots of other great places you can go to see in other parts of the country. So, first of all, I am going to talk about the northwest of England. The northwest of England is the region where I live, and I think it is great. So the major cities in the northwest are Liverpool, Manchester, and I say Lancaster. Lancaster is where I live. It is not a major city, but I wanted to show you. So you can see in the pictures, the football team on the bus is the Liverpool football team. The Liverpool football team, very famous, who won the Champions League last year. At the top is a picture of Manchester. Manchester, another town, another city in the northwest. Every year there is a big Christmas market in Manchester, a big Christmas market. And then lastly there is a picture of Lancaster, where I live. Lancaster, a smaller city, but I think it is a very nice place to live in. So what is the northwest famous for? Well, the three things in my opinion are music, football and the Lake District. Music, of course, there is the Beatles. The Beatles, who come from Liverpool. You can see the picture of the Beatles there. Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, the names of the Beatles. When the Beatles were active, when they made music, they were very, very popular, not only in England, but also around the world. So Liverpool is very famous for music. Manchester also is very famous for music. There is a group called Oasis, who are also very famous, who come from Manchester. So this really is the most important place for music in the country. Football as well, it's probably the most important place for football in the country. You have huge football teams. You have Manchester United, you have Manchester City, you have Liverpool, you have Everton as well. So all of these football teams in the northwest. So lots of fans, lots of people go to watch football. There's also a cricket team in the region called Lancashire, okay? So sport is very important, as in every region in the country. And there is also the Lake District. The Lake District, you can see the picture of the Lake District, so the hills, the countryside. This is a beautiful part of the northwest, which is found near the border with Scotland. So the very north of England, okay? There are lots of lakes, mountains, hills. It is a brilliant place to go walking, to do climbing. So that is the Lake District. So a quick activity then. So the Beatles song word search. So in this grid, in the square, there are about 20 different Beatles songs hidden in the grid. I want you to try to find 5 of them, okay? Try to find the names of 5 Beatles songs. You do not have to know the Beatles songs already. If you look and try to find English words, then it will probably make the name of the song. So look in the word search and try to find 5 songs. Pause the video, stop the video, and then press play when you have found 5, okay? Pause the video now and then play when you have found 5. Okay, so I hope you have succeeded. You have found 5 songs by the Beatles in that word search. Let us continue. So we have the northeast. Okay, so you can see on the map the northeast of England. The major cities in the northeast: Newcastle, York, Leeds. There is a county called Yorkshire, where you find York. Other cities maybe and towns: Sunderland, Bradford, but the main ones: Newcastle, York and Leeds. The first picture at the top is Newcastle. You can see a river that flows through it. A very industrial city is Newcastle. Very industrial. The northeast as a whole is industrial. It is famous for manufacturing cars. We also have York. York, you can see on the left the picture of the church. This is the famous church in York called York Minster. It is absolutely beautiful. And then Leeds as well. Leeds is another big northeastern city. So what is the region famous for? Vikings, the Angel of the North and York Minster. Okay, so Vikings, you can see the picture of the warriors, the 5 warriors with swords and shields and helmets. These are Vikings. These are people who came to England from Scandinavia, from countries like maybe Denmark, Norway, Sweden, that area of the world, and they came to England. They invaded England, and they invaded England from the northeast. So they came to York first. So the northeast is famous for Vikings who came to conquer England. Also, the Angel of the North. The Angel of the North is a statue you can see in the top right. That is the Angel of the North. It is a huge sculpture. I am not sure if the image shows how big this statue is. It is massive, and this is called the Angel of the North. You can see the long wings on either side. And again we have York Minster. So this is this famous church that you can find in York, where there are weddings for famous people, religious services. York Minster, one of the most important churches in the country. So we are going to look at the Vikings. What I want you to do is to complete this worksheet. You have to fill in the blanks with the words in the boxes so you can learn about the Vikings. Remember, these are the people that came to York from Scandinavia, the warriors who invaded England. So the Vikings were warriors who came from an area in Northern Europe called etc., etc. So write down the answers that go in the boxes. Fill the gaps. If you want to pause the video, stop the video so you have time to complete this activity, please do. So stop the video. Okay, so if you have completed that activity, we can continue. The Midlands. It is called the Midlands because it is the middle lands. The lands in the middle of the country. Okay? The Midlands is often forgotten in England because we think about the north, we think about the south, but in between, do not forget the Midlands. And there are some big cities in the Midlands. We have Birmingham, Leicester, Nottingham. So at the top you can see Birmingham. Birmingham is one of the biggest cities in England. I think it is the second biggest city in England, Birmingham. Okay, so lots of people live there. We also have Leicester in the Midlands. Leicester is the place where they recently discovered the skeleton of King Richard III. An old king, King Richard III, from hundreds of years ago. They recently discovered his skeleton in Leicester under a car park. They found his skeleton, the skeleton of this king, under a car park. And then also Nottingham. So you can see a picture of a cricket ground in Nottingham called Trent Bridge. Nottingham has a cricket ground. It also has 2 football stadiums which are very close. There is only about 100 metres between the 2 stadiums, and they are rivals. So 2 stadiums next to each other, Notts County and Nottingham Forest. My mum comes from Nottingham, so I go there quite a lot. So what is the Midlands famous for? Firstly, Robin Hood. Robin Hood is associated with the city of Nottingham. Robin Hood is a story of a man who was exiled and who stole from rich people. He took money from rich people and gave it to poor people. Okay? So he robbed from the rich to give to the poor. He stole money from rich people to give it to poor people. There is a Disney film about Robin Hood, and it is located in Nottingham. There is a character called the Sheriff of Nottingham, and Robin Hood lives in a forest called Sherwood Forest. Sherwood Forest, which also is in Nottingham. It's also famous for a football miracle. This is the miracle of Leicester City, when Leicester City won the league in the year 2016. And you can see 2 Italians in the picture when Leicester won the league. You have Claudio Ranieri, the manager, and Andrea Bocelli, the singer, who helped to celebrate the victory of Leicester when Leicester won the Premier League. Nobody expected Leicester to win. The Midlands is also famous for Shakespeare, probably the most famous English person in history, William Shakespeare, who was born in a town called Stratford upon Avon, which is located in the Midlands. And then there is Peaky Blinders, something more modern. Peaky Blinders, which is a television series which is set in Birmingham. Peaky Blinders in Birmingham in the 1920s. So Peaky Blinders, a modern day television series. If you have not seen it, I recommend it because it is very, very good. So now on to the southwest. So what do we have in the southwest? You can see on the map that there is a lot of coast here. So maybe some beaches, some seaside. Let's see. So the major cities in the southwest: Oxford, Bristol and Bath. At the top you can see Oxford. That is a picture of a library where sometimes I go to study. Oxford is where I go to university. It is an absolutely beautiful city. I love it. I would recommend anyone who goes to England to visit Oxford. There is also Bristol. This is in the bottom right, the picture with the colourful houses and the bridge. This is a famous bridge. So Bristol, another important city in the southwest of England. And then we have Bath as well. Bath is a city where there are Roman baths, okay? So when the Romans came and they built their baths, places with water, so where people could relax, they built a lot in this one place, and now we call it Bath, okay? So what is this region famous for? Well, Brunel. Brunel is the name of the architect who constructed the bridge that you can see in the picture. This bridge is called the Clifton Suspension Bridge and is a bridge in Bristol. Okay? And the man's full name is Isambard Kingdom Brunel. His name is Isambard Kingdom Brunel. He was an architect and engineer in the Victorian era, so in the 19th century. And he built so many things. He built boats, he built bridges, he built railways. He created the infrastructure of Britain. So Isambard Kingdom Brunel, very famous man from the southwest. Also Cornwall. So Cornwall is another region in the southwest. Cornwall is the region by the coast. So in Cornwall there are lots of beautiful beaches. You can see a picture of one of the beaches in Cornwall, the coast. Beautiful water, beautiful houses, beautiful landscape, long beaches, good weather. Cornwall is a place where a lot of people in Britain go on holiday. If they do not want to go to a different country, but they want to have some sun and they want to go to the beach, you go to Cornwall. And then we have Stonehenge. So Stonehenge is the name of the structure that you can see. A structure that was created hundreds of years ago. A very long time ago. And these are huge rocks which are stacked, which are placed, assembled in a strange formation. Okay? And people wonder how they succeeded in moving these huge rocks into this formation, because they would be very heavy. So Stonehenge is a very almost mystical site, a site of wonder in the south of England. So now we're going to watch a little video about Isambard Kingdom Brunel, this famous engineer. So watch the video and try to understand as much as possible. Okay, so let's listen with some captions. Okay, let's go.
Who built Victorian Britain? That's quite a big question, obviously. But if you think of something that was built in the Victorian era, from boats, trains, bridges and tunnels to palaces, hospitals and towns, yes towns, then the chances are this guy had something to do with it. Isambard Kingdom Brunel. This giant of engineering was born in Portsmouth on the 9th of April 1806 and lived to the grand old age of 53. That's 13 years longer than the average life expectancy at the time. And as you may have noticed, he had a bit of a standout name. Well, as per usual, that was thanks to his parents. Young Isambard was quite the talent. At 4, he had learned basic observation and drawing skills, and by 8, he had nailed geometry. Yes, the B-man developed an understanding of maths from a very young age. He understood how maths impacted the world around him. There's a connection between maths and art, maths and music, maths and beauty, and maths, architecture, and engineering. For example, music and dance works on patterns of numbers and different sequences. Design uses symmetry to make things that look pleasing to the eye. And architecture combines all of these elements and others like shapes and tessellations to create buildings that are practical and beautiful. But sometimes you just need good old-fashioned maths to solve a problem, like when you need to dig the world's longest tunnel through a hill made of solid rock, drilling from both ends at the same time and meeting perfectly in the middle. Yes, Izzy had to apply all of his mathematical knowledge of shapes, angles, and numbers to this real-life problem and make sure that the tunnels met at exactly the right point deep in the middle of the hill. And, of course, they did. But why was he digging through a hill in the first place? Well, because he wanted to, but also so that the railway track he was building would run on ground that was as flat as possible. Not only was Brunel a maths and engineering ace, he also knew about geography, both human and physical geography. Human geography is about people and how our activity is affected or influenced by the Earth's surface, like how we move around and where we live. Have you ever noticed how lots of the biggest cities in the UK are built around rivers? That's because of human geography and the way people use rivers for transport, trade, and access to the sea. Physical geography is about natural features, things that people haven't made, like rivers, hills, mountains, and coasts. People want to get to places quickly, but there are hills and stuff in the way, so we need to do something about that. Box Tunnel between Bath and Chippenham is just one example of where Brunel overcame a challenge posed by physical geography to aid human geography. This time, the physical geography feature that Brunel needed to help people overcome was the Atlantic Ocean. And he did it by building 3 ships, including the first steel-hulled, steam-engined, propeller-powered ship, the SS Great Britain, which you can still visit in Bristol Harbour today. Now, building boats is a science in itself. You would think that building something out of metal that needs to float on the sea is probably not the best idea. But that's where Brunel's understanding of physics came into play. Brunel knew there's one main thing that you need to consider when you're making a boat, and that's buoyancy. The buoyant force is the force that makes things float. Floating something in water, for example, pushes the water out of the way, and so the water pushes back, and that makes things float. If something doesn't move enough water to resist its own weight, that's when it sinks. Brunel knew that a steel hull ship would still float and would be a safer, stronger, and longer-lasting ship to transport people across the Atlantic Ocean. One of the most famous images of Brunel is of him at the launching chains of the SS Great Eastern, and you can see just how huge the ship must have been by the size of its chains. You can also see how Brunel used to wear a large top hat to make himself look taller. Isambard Kingdom Brunel was a problem-solving, nation-growing, public transport providing, industry-leading, ingenious inventor and engineer who practically designed and built Victorian Britain single-handedly. And that's why he's a total genius of engineering.
Okay, so that is a little bit about the man, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Not very famous, but one of the most important people in the history of England. So now on to the southeast of England. London can be found in the southeast, but as I said at the start, I do not want to talk about London. You already know about Big Ben, Buckingham Palace, the Queen, the London Eye. That is not interesting to me. So what else is there in the southeast of England? The major cities: Canterbury, Cambridge, Brighton. Canterbury, there is a cathedral you can see in the picture, Canterbury Cathedral. Cambridge, obviously famous for its university, and Brighton as well. Okay, Brighton, a town on the sea with a very famous pier. You can see the pier, the man-made structure that goes into the sea. That is the pier. So Brighton, famous for the coast, Canterbury for religion, and Cambridge for education. So what is the region famous for? So Brighton, this coastal town, is famous for its Pride Parade. There is a big gay pride event every year in Brighton. The area is known for being very welcoming to everyone. So that is what Brighton is famous for. There's also the White Cliffs of Dover. These are very famous. So the White Cliffs of Dover, the cliff, the end of the country. If you are on a boat, you go from a boat from France to England. The first thing you see of England is the White Cliffs. So this is a point of maybe nostalgia. It is an image. If you see the White Cliffs of Dover, you know that you are home. Okay, so they're very important. Dover is the name for the region in the southeast. And then, of course, there's Cambridge University, which is the second best university in England, in my opinion, behind Oxford. But Cambridge is a brilliant university. It is where Professor Stephen Hawking studied, the famous physicist. And there is a beautiful river that runs through with incredible buildings. I think Oxford and Cambridge have a very unique style of building, and they are definitely good places for you to go and visit. So, some questions just to finish for you to answer, or activities. Number 1, can you write 2 sentences, please, describing each region? So we've looked at the northwest, the northeast, the Midlands, the southwest and the southeast. So what have you learned about these places? So please write 2 sentences describing each of these regions. Number 2, which of these regions would you like to visit and why? What is good about these regions? Why would you want to visit? So which region, choose one region, would you like to visit and why? And number 3, write 2 sentences about the region where you live in Italy. Okay, so you all live in the same region in Italy. Can you describe it? What are the main towns, the main cities? What is it famous for? What are the things you can do there? All of these things. So a few questions, few activities for you to do. That is the end of the video. So please answer these questions. Send them to your teacher. Thank you very much for listening. And I will speak to you soon. Thank you very much.